All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Land Use GPAC workshop this evening. This is our fourth meeting. My name is Brandon Rabideau, and I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. Matt is on a much-needed vacation, and I'm stepping in from tonight, so I apologize if I mess up any names this evening as we do roll call. I'm going to go ahead and call your name. If you could just state that you're present. Bailey?
Present.
Brown?
Here.
Comachero?
Here.
Elliott? Evantoff?
Here.
Flores?
Here.
Joyce?
Here.
Ginsburg?
Here.
Letgers?
Here.
Lieberman? Luker? We have an excused absence for Tammy Marine. Monroe?
Here.
Cazeda? Tiss?
Here.
Vadra Kajur?
Here.
Valdez? And Wilson. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for attending tonight's meeting. We do have a lot of public comments, so we're going to give each speaker 3 minutes to speak, and we are going to go over the allotted 15 minutes just so we can make sure we can hear everybody tonight. So we'll go ahead. Tonight's order of business is we'll do public comments, then we're going to do 2 different activities. At that time, we will also introduce our planning staff that's here, as well as our consultants that are here to support you on this activity this evening. So looking forward to it and appreciate you all being here on this Thursday evening. So if we want to go ahead and if we could start with the public comment, let's start with John Meyer and Melinda Margiata. And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is John Meyer, and although some of you may not know me, we have something very important in common. 35 years ago, I sat in a room very much like this, working with another GPAC committee. The city had hired me as a senior planner and project manager for the city's very first general plan. The GPAC process is as important today as it was back then, and I applaud everyone for their participation in the committee and certainly for the public input. That's what makes a good general plan. We'd like to take a minute to introduce a simple request to adjust a boundary between 2 land use designations on a single piece of property. Here to introduce our request is the property owner, Melinda Margiati.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me this evening, and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. So I moved to Temecula in 1978, long time ago. Temecula has always been my home and will always be my home. I love everything about it. In 2000, I purchased a piece of property beside our preschool. I purchased it because I wanted to be protective of what was going to go beside it. However, since then, and I gave you all, I'm not sure if it's going to go on the screen or, no. That's okay, I gave you all handouts. So the first handout that you have shows if somebody goes into the city. The second handout, I just outlined which piece of property that we're talking about. It's off of Solana Way in Margarita, and the yellow on the side of that is the preschool ABC. And then the next page, number 3, shows the actual, Helix did a study, and it shows the aerial of what the property actually looks like. So the last one shows what had happened on the property. The city arbitrarily put that line right down the middle, which you can see
That'd be me.
is nowhere close to where it should be. So our request is that we move that line more appropriate so that we can utilize the space. Of course, we understand we will have to adhere to any local and state requirements, and we understand that. So that's our ask tonight, to just move it back where it should be. Any questions? Okay, you guys are great. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is going to be Dennis Fitz.
Good evening. I was here last time, and I'm going to repeat some of what I said before, but I've got some new information also. My property is in the Nicholas Valley, which is currently zoned for 2.5 acres per dwelling unit. In 1991, when I moved here, the county had it zoned for half-acre parcels eventually. But in the general plan process, it was decided that, well, there's not enough infrastructure, so we need to make it 2.5 acre zoning. So that's where it is today. And there's been a lot of change since then, of course. What I want to discuss today is that there was an opinion poll that was taken in 2009. There were a series of meetings, 2007, 8, and 9, with residents of the area, and they wanted to determine if people there wanted to change the zoning. Well, they did an opinion poll, and they polled everybody in that area. And as it turned out, there were 4 choices: 1 acre, 1/2 acre, 3/4 acre, and leave it as it is. And the numbers actually I'm presenting today, 35 wanted to keep it as it is, 3 wanted 3/4 acre, 28 for 1/2 acre, and 35 for 1 acre. 35 for 1 acre was the one that most people wanted. But the city decided, well, there's no consensus, there's no majority here, we'll just leave it as it is, and that was 2009. And I think it is time to address this in the general plan. I think most people would like 1 acre. There would be a way we could do an opinion poll again and use a ranked sum instead of just having 4 things where people are trying to come up with a majority, which is almost impossible. Just have them vote and do a ranked sum, and then most people will get what they want that way. So that's it. Any questions? I have the opinion poll here if you'd like to see it. Yes.
Hi, Sherry Monroe, real quick question.
Sherry, we're not going to be, this is public comment, we're not
Oh.
going to be answering questions at this point. Yeah.
I'll make a note.
All right, we got our third public speaker, Mr. Lewis Todd. Welcome.
Good evening, GPAC members. I've been here before. I've spoken a couple times. My name's Louis Todd. I live in Homeowners Association called Los Ranchitos. I'm currently serving as the president of the board of directors. There are several Los Ranchitos members here. Can we get a show of hands just to show you guys? There are people here. We're not here to talk about necessarily land use. There are some, but our specific topic is, again, the proposed widening that's going to go through the center of our neighborhood. And as the GPAC committee, you guys do have that ability to make the recommendations. We've asked you specifically to remove the proposed widening that's going to happen on Inez, La Paz, and Deportola. Since the last time I spoke with you, we attended a planning commission meeting, and we asked the planning commission to remove the proposed La Paz widening. They extended it for another 5 years. And so we keep getting told that it's the GPAC that's going to make the recommendations to get this removed from the general plan. And so we really need your help. And so we're asking for you to support our request. We don't think it's extra. We're not asking to be treated any differently than any other homeowner. And again, a reminder is that they're proposing to put 4 lanes in front of our driveways. Currently, the city actually has a rule that they would not allow a housing development to be put onto a secondary arterial road or a road that had 4 lanes. And so why would the city then want to put 4 lanes through in front of our homes? Are they wanting to condemn our homes and kick us out so they can put commercial? I don't think so. I think it's just an oversight. And I understand, as an engineer, I understand that the traffic people are focused on moving traffic from point A to B, but they shouldn't have to drive through our neighborhood and harm our quality of life. And so we're asking for your help. I do have some documents if you'd like to have a copy of it. It's our specific request that you could put in your binder. And if you'd like to have those, I can pass them out now or after the meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is going to be, it looks like Chris Sizemore.
Good evening, GPAC members. Thank you for allowing me to have an opportunity to speak. I went through the meeting, the agenda for the meeting, and So even though I'm not a member of the GPAC, I went ahead and answered the questions in the back, or, after reviewing and everything. And so I have some answers for those. I did not make copies for everyone, but I'd like to just enter them in the record. I'm not going to go through all of them now, just for consideration. A couple of key points, definitely for multi-use overlays and where those end up in the town. Have some thoughts on those. And then also have some thoughts on the parking and also on the what needs to be broken down for land use, and it really seems like it's pretty well. So if I can, just enter that in. If people will take the time just to review it, I surely would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker, I only have it by the name of Nicholas for Strongtown is what they wanted to talk about. Nicholas, would you state your full name for me, please?
Oh, Nicholas DePaulo.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, well, hi everyone, I'm Nick. I'm the founder of Strongtown's Temecula, and I care deeply about making our community more walkable and sustainable. I feel lucky to even be here tonight. I almost couldn't make it, and I know there are people who care just as much, but they're working or tied up. When you walk this city, you notice the gaps. Near Old Town, across the river, there's a desire path where people want to reach the bike path, but there's no crosswalk, just brush. That tells me people want safer, direct connections. And when you walk across Rancho California Road to Tower Plaza, there's a steep desire path going to the AMC Theater through the parking garage. It's not inviting nor encouraging. Another example is Palm Plaza and Tower Center Plaza entrances and exits for the cars. When the traffic backs up, your view gets blocked from the stop signs, and it feels stressful just trying to cross or turn safely for both pedestrians and drivers. I like that we are here to shift away from personal blame and talk about how we design these spaces. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that when you walk your city outside of your car, especially with others, you understand it very differently than from your car seat. You see perspectives you didn't know, you meet people you didn't know shared your views, and I had no idea this many people here share the values of having people-friendly environments and infrastructure that pays for itself. I'm not a policy expert, I'm just someone who lives this town. I believe we can think beyond cars and towards safer streets and stronger transit, including real connections outside of Flixbus south to San Diego and better access north to Metrolink. We need to connect our plazas in Old Town so it's not an isolated island. We're planning for 2050, and I'm committed to that vision with you guys. I've been doing very much of this alone, but I know it takes all of us. If you'd like to connect, DM me on Instagram at Strongtowns Temecula. I'd love to hear from you. Please take and send me photos or videos of anything in regards to these topics. I could very much use your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next public comment is going to be Daryl Cohen.
Good evening, city staff and GPAC members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Daryl Cowan. I am here representing the Riverside County Sheriff Volunteer Mounted Posse Temecula Station. Formed in 1992, we are a nonprofit group of sworn volunteers under the direction of the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. Today, our troop has about 20 members and is currently the second largest posse in the department. Each member provides their own horse, equipment, and time in order to support public safety and community engagement. You regularly see us at parades, charity events, patrolling Old Town, community gatherings throughout Temecula. We also assist with search and rescue efforts and serve extra eyes and ears for law enforcement. Our presence helps create positive connections between residents and law enforcement. What people don't realize is the amount of training required to do the work that we do. To a horse, everyday things like baby strollers, balloons, umbrellas, traffic, or crowds can be frightening. To safely serve the public, we must continue to desensitize and train our horses in a controlled environment. Because we currently do not have a training facility in Temecula, we have to travel to Marietta Equestrian Center. The land and facilities property of the city of Marietta and is operated as part of their parks and recreational system. Having a public equestrian center here in Temecula would directly support our ability to safely serve residents. A place like this will allow us to frequently train safer horses, safer riders, and a safe public interactions. It would also serve the broadened equestrian community and preserve a defining part of Temecula's character. We understand the city-owned parcel on the corner of Yanez and Santiago is valuable land and will likely be developed in the future. However, that development may still be many years away. In the interim, there's been a community interest in activating the space as a community garden. We believe a thoroughly designed mixed-use space that includes both a garden and an equestrian arena would be far more beneficial to the community that is underutilized and unattractive vacant lot. It would provide the community us now while still preserving the community for long-term development when the time is right. As part of this land use discussion, we respectfully encourage the community to consider recommitting this in term use of this site. This type of amenity is not just recreational, it supports public safety, community engagement, and heritage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Lee Rizzo.
Good evening. I live in Los Ranchitos community, just like many people in this room tonight, and that community is located along Inez de Portola Road. This is one of the oldest residential areas in Temecula. This corridor was built long before current commuter diversion patterns existed. It was designated as a residential roadway with direct driveways, pedestrian activity, and a center turn lane for controlled access to homes. My primary concern with the widening of this road to 4 lanes, as stated in the current general plan, is safety. Wider roads increase speed. Increased speed increases crash severity. 4 lanes create significantly more conflict points for residents entering and exiting their homes. Every driveway becomes a high-risk maneuver. Left turns into homes require navigating multiple streams of traffic. In addition, this is an active equestrian community. Horses are highly sensitive to noise, sudden acceleration, and high-speed traffic. Increasing lane capacity will likely increase speed and heavy vehicle volume, creating a more dangerous and unpredictable environment. This corridor is frequently used by commuters avoiding I-15 congestion. When freeway slows, our neighborhood becomes a regional overflow route. But regional traffic diversion should not redefine the safety standards of one of Temecula's oldest neighborhoods. Widening does not fix diversion. It accommodates and attracts more of it. Traffic modeling may show congestion, but models typically measure vehicle delay. They do not measure the increased risk imposed on residential driveways or long-term safety consequences of converting a neighborhood corridor into a commuter arterial. No new subdivision today would be designed with the direct driveways feeding onto a 4-lane commuter road. If that configuration is inconsistent with modern safety principles, it should not be imposed retroactively on established residents. The general plan is about long-term vision. I respectfully request that the 4-lane widening designation be removed and this corridor be evaluated through a safety-first, context-sensitive approach that protects existing neighborhoods. Temecula should preserve the character and safety of its oldest communities, not redesign them to serve pass-through traffic. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Amy, I believe it's Nadias? Amy?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name is Amy Danishman, and I'm a 12-year resident of Los Ranchitos. I chose Temecula as my home because I fell in love with its beautiful wine country and Western heritage. I know that everyone here is not an equestrian, but Old Town's Western charm, along with our open spaces and vineyards, are what attracts residents and tourists alike. As an equine professional that runs a youth amateur program, I moved here seeking peace from an ever-growing population where horses and agricultural programs were pushed out. I've watched the fairgrounds get paved over, boarding centers disappear, trail easements get blocked forever, and youth programs shut down. I don't want to see this happen here. I care deeply about keeping the connectivity alive in our equine community. I'm here this evening to respectfully ask that the Santiago lot be considered for a public covered arena that would serve as a multi-use space while preserving Temecula's long-standing equestrian roots. This space is an ideal location as it sits above Old Town. It is the entrance to Deep Portola Wine Trail, large horse ranches, and Los Ranchitos, the original equestrian community established before Temecula was officially a city. I chose to live in this neighborhood because of its rural character, beautiful trails, and horse-friendly zoning. Having access to a public arena would support the equestrian community in an organized setting, whether that's individual riding, educational clinics, mounted posse training, youth instruction, or drill practice. It reinforces the identity that originally defined our community. A covered facility would allow equestrians for consistent year-round use, provide a central location for equestrians without an arena to safely ride and train. It would also provide a dedicated staging area for Old Town parades and miles of existing trails which lead to Butterfield Stage Road and the rest of wine country. Beyond riding use, the space would support vendor markets, clinics and demonstrations, agricultural education, and stewardship. Local 4-H and FFA programs could utilize the arena for meetings, banquets, and project showcases, giving youth and families a place to gather and learn. I'd also like to share that over 750 local residents have signed a petition expressing interest in seeing this land considered for a covered arena and multi-use facility. This demonstrates meaningful community support for preserving Temecula's horse-friendly character. I have not yet had the opportunity to formally discuss this concept with city staff, and I'm here to respectfully begin that conversation, to share the level of community interest and to better understand what the appropriate next steps might be. I'd also like to point out our fellow horse people tonight who have shown up in support of this proposal for land use. This proposal is about stewardship, protecting the character of Los Ranchitos and Temecula, while creating a managed, community-oriented space that supports recreation, education, and connection. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Our next public comment is Eric McKillow? Apologize for butchering that.
That's all right. McKillican is what it is. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Eric McKillican. I live in Los Ranchitos as well with my wife, Dr. Jennifer Rosenberg. She is an equine veterinarian. I'm a human chiropractor and an equine chiropractor as well. I spoke last time we were here. I passed out pictures, and so I'm not going to just go through it again, but I just wanted to be that squeaky wheel, just repeating things just a little bit. A few things that I wanted to repeat and squeak about was that Los Ranchitos was established in 1966, not thinking about the infrastructure of 2025. So the reality is that all of the driveways that enter and exit the Yanez and Deep Portola Road count to about 67, they count to 67 exactly. That's a lot of driveways. That's a lot of residents that enter and exit their properties every day. So the big question is how could we manage a widening proposal and maintain safety? Because right now the safety is very low, in my opinion. I mentioned earlier, last time, it's very scary to bring my garbage cans out to the corner, let alone taking a 4-horse trailer and trying to make a right-hand turn is very difficult without cars passing you on the inside. Making a left-hand turn without cars actually honking and running up your backside. It's very, very difficult. And again, we've got livestock inside those trailers, which are very susceptible to the environment in which they're in, which we've actually had hurt during these events. So I wanted to throw that at you. Again, I want to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said. You cannot rezone, you could not reverse engineer this. You could not get approval for 67 driveways off of a 4-lane road. You just could not. So why are we trying to make it work? My ask is that we remove this from the city planning and just try and figure out some way of creating safety. And that would be reducing the speed limit, not increasing that. So, and the last ask would be what my good friend Amy just said, is that on the corner of Santiago and Yanez, that vacant lot be considered for an equestrian arena, a covered equestrian arena. All of those points that she mentioned would be exactly what I would reiterate. They're very important, and in addition to that, also an area for fire evacuation and safety if we did need to evacuate local areas. So that would be something to consider as well. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your time.
And our last public speaker is Mark. I'm not going to even try this one. Is it Latoro? Laturno?
Good evening, GPAC members. Thank you for the opportunity again to address you. I also was here in October and November as well, so this is a great opportunity. I also live in Los Ranchitos on De Portola Road, and so safety is a primary concern for us. I'm asking for seeking changes or removal of items that are in the 2005 general plan, including the widening of La Paz and the remove the consideration for widening of Yanez and De Portola. We're concerned primarily with the safety through that corridor, and as I can only imagine that as the 2005 plan was developed, it was before all of the completion of Paseo del Sol, the other activities, or the other housing beyond Butterfield Stage Road, including out past wine country. So as that's continued to grow, people continue to use these as cut-throughs. And lots and lots of traffic isn't bad because it means it's moving slowly. But it creates hazards when people end up in your front yard going 45 miles an hour. So thank you. Have a nice evening.
That concludes our public speakers. I just want to say thank you to everyone, especially the folks that have come several times. Really appreciate it. This is an important part of the process, and we're very fortunate to have community members that want to come up and speak, and we very much appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our consultant, Amanda, and she's going to lead us into our land use presentation.
All right, well, thank you for joining us again this evening. As we've done a few times prior, we have some subject area experts here with us tonight that I'll introduce and are going to be leading the part of this presentation. I just wanted to give everyone a preview of where we're headed. So tonight's conversation is the start of a land use conversation. It is not the be-all, end-all moment. This is to start to develop some ideas, some points of consideration, and really provide some direction to the consultant team and to city staff on things to research and consider and to look into in the coming months. Following tonight's meeting, we'll be able to dive deeper into some of the ideas that are brought forward and really come back to you at a future meeting with answers to those questions. So tonight, we're not hoping to solve all issues related to land use. We are looking to start a conversation on some key ideas and topics that we need to study further. So there are no right or wrong answers here. With that, we are really excited to have tonight an old colleague of mine and friend of mine, Drew Watkins with JZMK Partners, and some colleagues of his who he will introduce. We are going to be talking all things land use, urban design, and community character. They do have a brief presentation that's going to kind of set the stage for where we're headed, but most of tonight's meeting is going to be in our roundtables in the center, where we're going to be working in small groups to discuss some of these ideas and then reporting back to the group as well. I did want to let members of the audience know that we will have similar, smaller individual pages to what the GPAC members are working on in the center. And so when we come time to the activity portion of the evening, members of the audience will be provided an option to individually answer questions and mark things on their own maps and return those to staff as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, and then we'll go ahead and get started on tonight's activity.
Great.
Can everybody hear that okay? Okay. Thanks, Amanda. My name is Drew Watkins. I'm partner and president of JZMK. I'm joined here by Adrienne Hutchinson, one of our planners, and Boom Wongom. I'm an architect and urban designer by background, and excited to be here with you tonight. Really excited for the turnout. It's great to have so many people here for land use. So I'm going to give a little introduction on JZMK. We're going to talk about Temecula's land use, and then we have two activities. I am going to try to move through this, we're doing okay, in definitely less than half an hour so that we have plenty of time for activities and discussion. So JZMK, we're an architecture, planning, urban design firm. Our kind of mantra is that we listen, we collaborate, we solve, and we create. We really believe that a collaborative approach is needed in problem solving for our architectural, urban design, and planning projects. We really abide by 5 key values. Those are mutual respect, creative energy, doing the right thing, a spirit of partnership, and community service. And you can kind of see how those, again, kind of reinforce that idea of collaboration. We also believe that in the design work that we do, that placemaking, especially when we're talking about kind of the planning and urban design side of things, that's really a key part of the art of what we do. We like to create vision. We're creative problem solvers. We are community focused. We want to create sustainable, livable cities and neighborhoods. And through all this, we're working on building strong communities. We believe that the relationships between people is what forms communities, and we want to create the places that those exist within. So in terms of land use planning, we always like to start at kind of a bigger scale. So this is kind of our regional interpretation as we kind of dove into what is Temecula, and would love to kind of have continued feedback on this as we understand what Temecula is. We're from Orange County. We've come and visited Temecula. We know that Temecula has a great old town. It has this wine country that's pretty special. So we know like a little bit about it, but we've over the last few months have really dove in and tried to understand where Temecula sits. And we were struck by that it sits kind of between the Santa Ana Mountains, the Agua Tibia Mountains, and the San Jacinto foothills. So these kind of these landforms that the city of Temecula sits in the valley of. It's at the confluence of Murrieta Creek and Temecula Creek, and the town kind of sits along these waterways in this valley. And we thought that it it felt a little kind of like snuggled in to this these rolling hills. The city boundary is about 24,000 acres, just under 24,000 acres. We're actually going to be looking, we're focusing on that area. Obviously, we're here in the city of Temecula, but the city does have some areas outside of this. So you'll hear these terms, sphere of influence and planning area. Those are slightly larger boundaries, and that includes some areas of kind of county land that sits just adjacent to the city. So some of that includes wine country, and then areas a little bit north into French Valley. So as you kind of hear those terms, that's what those mean. So you have the city boundary, and then sphere of influence, and then planning areas even slightly bigger. The population of Temecula is about 112,000 as of a year or so ago. It's been a growing city over the years. It's certainly seen some of cities around it also grow quite a bit, and so as a region, it's definitely growing even faster than what maybe the city may see itself. In terms of the land uses within Temecula, this is your existing land use map. We've kind of taken the color, so if this doesn't look exactly familiar, we've taken the colors that are in your existing land use map and kind of recolored them to try to fold in all of the land uses that are in kind of specific plans and kind of create a more easily readable graphic. And so basically you're seeing in the tans and browns, you're seeing densities of residential, and that makes up about 45% of your city. Then the greens are all open space. Just over 30% of your city, plus agriculture, so actually it's almost 40% of your city if you count kind of ag into that open space category. Industrial, park, and office jumps down to 6%, so everything now kind of in the commercial public is even much smaller. So commercial 4%, public institutional 4%, and then you have some tribal land within the city boundary, about 3%. If we kind of dive into each of those land uses, the residential and mixed use is made up of several different land uses, a whole spectrum, everything from very low density residential, and I'll describe a little bit about what density means as we go on, but it's 0.2 to 0.4 DU per acre. So if you kind of flip that around, that's basically 1 unit per 5 acres down to 1 unit per 2.5 acres, which is a gentleman earlier was referencing that lower end zoning. And that steps up into various densities of residential from rural to low, medium, high. And then there are kind of some more kind of urban densities. You have downtown neighborhood residential, 20 to 35 DU per acre, and then 2 mixed use categories. One is kind of a tighter one from 20 to 40 DU per acre, and then another one goes 40 to 70. So it gets a bit denser as well. And those are fairly limited in your downtown area. And then open spaces, agricultural and tribal lands. So these are, again, kind of 6 different categories. We have different areas that represent these throughout the city, and some, the wine countries, obviously that's one of those areas that's within the sphere of influence, but not necessarily within the city boundary. In addition to those open spaces, we're also really interested in the connections that occur within the city. And so this is a map that shows not only the open spaces, but also the trails. Several people earlier referenced some of these, the horse trails, which are obviously a very valuable part of the community, bike trails, walking trails, and the ability to connect those and improve upon them is a great goal for the general plan. And then kind of lumped together, industrial, institutional, and office. So you have industrial park, office, and public institutional facilities, of which we're in one of them right now. And then finally, commercial. And that's composed of 4 different commercial categories. You have a neighborhood commercial, highway tourist commercial, community commercial, and service commercial. And those, similar to your residential densities, also have densities assigned to them. Those are more based upon how large the structure is versus how many units are on the piece of property. And then finally, we were also mapped, in addition to open spaces, we mapped some of the key community assets that you have within the city. And so, those are the obvious things of the wine country. You have, these great equestrian centers. There are airport infrastructures. You have, some great kind of community open spaces like Duck Pond or the Temecula Rose Garden. And so we wanted to kind of understand where those key community assets and gathering spaces were. So as we dive kind of a little, closer in, we shared that kind of regional diagram earlier. This is kind of how we see the city framework, right? There's this kind of commercial core along 15, then there, also a bit along 79, and then there's, these equestrian neighborhoods that are in the hills to the east, that then kind of bleeds into wine country the further east you go, and kind of some kind of community oriented areas kind of in the center part of the city along that kind of east-west axis. As we started to think about where are the kind of activated spaces within the city, we identified 6 zones of activity, and these kind of will start to shape some of the activity that we're going to do here in the room in just a little bit. And so of these 6, we identified kind of the promenade at Temecula, and then just by that, the MSJC Temecula Valley campus. So those are kind of co-located. We'll be dealing with those 2 on one of our maps. We also identified Uptown Temecula, Old Town Temecula, Temecula Parkway Commercial Strip, and the Temecula Valley Wine Country. And we're going to deal with kind of primarily the first 5, Temecula Valley Wine Country being outside of the city boundary. We're not going to focus on as much. So we took those and we identified kind of 4 maps. So we folded those zones 1 and 2 into a map. and then Zone 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to kind of spend some time focusing on those different zones this evening. And so just to reiterate, Zone 1 and 2, or the Promenade Temecula and the MSJC Temecula Valley Campus, Zone 3, Uptown Temecula, Zone 4, Old Town Temecula, and Zone 5, Temecula Parkway Commercial Strip. And if we just zoom into each of those, we can see that in Zone 1 and 2, it's a mix of community commercial, service commercial, industrial, park, and office. And you'll see on these maps, we're really focusing on these non-residential uses. It was actually very interesting to hear some of the community comments about your lowest density residential use, and it would be great to maybe continue that discussion a bit to see if there is something that should be done land use wise about that. But in general, we're not so much interested in looking at the residential areas. We're really interested in looking at kind of non-residential areas and how those may shift over time. So similarly in Zone 3, the key uses are community commercial, neighborhood commercial, service commercial, public institutional, and you have a lot of industrial, park, and office in this area. Zone 4, this is kind of Old Town, but also kind of south of Old Town. I think there's an opportunity area, and so you certainly have some mixed use in this area, public institutional, service, and neighborhood commercial. And then Zone 5 is that kind of commercial strip along 79. So there's some highway tourist, commercial, community, and service commercial, and industrial park. We've also been labeling here, a lot of these land uses exist within specific plans. And you'll see on the maps that we've tried to label where those specific plans are and kind of demarcate them in those red boundaries. We are certainly open to talking about them. We just want to note that the specific plans kind of have a more, as the term is, a more specific zoning document that governs them. And so the general plan can have some influence on them, but to really influence the land uses within those specific plans, there's kind of a secondary step that has to be done to amend the specific plans as well. And so we certainly want to capture that feedback and just recognize that if there's desired land use ideas related to those areas, that it may just take further steps to achieve those. Okay, so that's kind of the primer on land use. I did want to kind of bring back before you a couple recaps from some earlier presentations. So this is a slide that talks about the economic absorption capacity of the city. And so this is looking at the kind of the market 20 years out, and it's saying from what is currently zoned in the city, this is what the city can accommodate from what the market is demanding. And that changes constantly. So this was a 2024 study. It's probably it's a year later, so it's probably already at a year plus later. It's already out of date. But it's a good guide in thinking about what types of development are desired in Temecula.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's how much you think the market is demanding. What are the RENA numbers that we are going to be forced to build?
Really good question. It's approximately a little over 4,000 units. The RENA process is through the housing element process, which is actually oddly separate of this, but this discussion can be tied into housing as a whole, so the areas that we study.
They can't be separated.
We don't have, well, the housing element is a separate part of the general plan that's updated on a separate cycle. But what we're looking for here is we're going to study different areas, and they could be future areas for study. But we have met our RENA right now. We will have another cycle in a few years.
Yeah.
2030, 2040, 2050, we have to look at, okay, how much is going to be required over and above 7,054? So what's the real number that we have to, as we start plotting things on the map, sit and play with monopoly houses and hotels and things?
We don't know that number because we are assigned that number from SCAG. So that number is given on a regional basis, which comes from the state down to the regional planning agencies. So we don't even have that number. That process is underway. But when we have that number, that's when we can plan for it. But what we've done in the past, historically in the city, is we've identified areas that when those numbers come in, we kind of are doing focus areas like this so that we can plan for them in the future. So it's not a surprise. We don't want to be in a rush like many other cities have been to plan for it later. We have already identified these areas.
Okay.
That if I might, understand what you're saying, but given where the state is today, recognizing the shortage in housing, I think we can bet the RANA number is going to go up. And I do think we have to be a little bit proactive in looking at that. We all know that's a horrible process, and things are kind of shoved down our throat, but we do have to listen, so.
Absolutely, and that's what the focus areas are for. So it's identify future areas for growth. So for instance, this is not what needs to happen, but an example would be, well, we probably have an excess of potentially retail, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you strengthen retail? That's one of the conversations you might have tonight. Another idea is, well, what do we do if some of that retail is no longer functional, right? We don't want it abandoned. We don't want vacant areas. So we can identify those in the focus areas tonight. So that's part of that. But again, we don't know what those RENA numbers are. We're not assigning them, but it's certainly something we want to study. And that's really the purpose of tonight is where do we go next?
Do we have a wild guess?
We don't have a wild guess. It is a black box that we really, we don't know how the numbers come up from. There's a process, it's a public process, but still, even in the last RENA cycle, there was a lot of questions on how did we even arrive at those numbers. And there's a lot of conflict with that. The state has actually audited the RENA process, and they have some areas for opportunity and improvement that they've identified. And so I think we really don't know what that number is going to be. And there was some major political and policy shifts that occurred in the region where the coastal cities decided to take on more units in the past, because our original RENA number was upwards of 10,000 units. We were very happy to see that what we already had planned for was accommodated with our ultimate number.
And just, Drew, a clarification or two. Temecula wine country is not in the city sphere. It's adjacent to the city, but it's not technically in the sphere.
You're right. It's in our planning area, but not our
Right.
sphere of influence. Correct.
And when you referred to Highway 79, can you be a little more specific? Because that's Winchester on the north and Temecula Parkway on the south.
Yes,
So
sorry,
now that
Temecula
they
Parkway
both have
on the
names,
south.
it's easier. Thank you.
Yeah.
One
Thank you.
last thing, on when you, on one of the maps, you showed TCI, Temecula Creek Inn. You have that as reservation tribal land now, right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so just to review this chart and kind of what it means. So basically, the second column, well, the first column is the land use type, fairly easy to understand. The second column is the remaining development capacity. So this is looking at your land uses within the city and gauging, about how much development capacity could be added to the city based upon your current land uses. And then the third column is basically what is the market asking for over the next 20 years. And then the final column is just the difference between the two. And so basically the first row is saying that the city is, the market is demanding 30,000 square feet more than what your development capacity is. But that's actually such a small percentage of those numbers that it's just about even, right? It's 1.37 versus 1.4 million square feet of office. So you're about even on office. Industrial, you don't have a lot of remaining capacity, and there's a huge demand for industrial in the market. And so that's actually, an opportunity. If the city wants more industrial, there's a demand for it. And you may decide, yes, we want industrial. You may decide, nope, we don't want industrial. That's better, served by one of our neighbors. Hotel, you have about 646 rooms in your development capacity, and there's a good demand for hotel, and so there is opportunity potentially for additional hotels in the city. Residential, we were just talking about. I think there's this market demand. RENA is another consideration which should be thought about. And you're just about even again. Similar to office here, you're a little oversupplied, but it's pretty much even. Retail is one like industrial that's off, but in the other way. You have a lot of development capacity for retail in the city, but not a lot of demand. And so what that tells you is that there may be land that is designated for retail that actually could be repurposed for other uses, and you're not going to suffer from that because there's plenty of available retail land as there is. Also wanted to just recap some of the community survey information, just as kind of some guiding goals. There were some kind of key themes that came out of that: smart growth and affordability, transportation and mobility, safety and cleanliness, park trails and recreation, economic vitality and culture, sustainability and resilience. And then finally, kind of more pertaining to our own visioning, some of these land use priorities, and I'll just go a little deeper here. So this, public spaces and uses receiving the highest priority, followed by, some interest in vertical mixed use, housing and employment opportunities, and then also shopping and dining. And then just kind of summary of those key things. So, preserving open space and nature access, expanding biking and walking trails, protecting Old Town and wine country while enhancing tourism, and then also improving infrastructure before new development goes in. Okay, so that's kind of my spiel. And you won't have to listen to me for much longer here. Though I am going to go, and we're going to get into one little bit on density and some description of some pieces of the activities. But the first activity is really going to be around defining the areas of interest. So we have some maps where we kind of picked out those zones that I went over earlier. But now we're going to ask you guys to determine, within those zones, and if we missed areas, please mark that as well. We have an overall map that you could mark that on. But within these zones, where are specific areas that you think we should be spending more effort on? Where are there opportunities? And conversely, I guess if there are areas that you don't want touched, we can mark that as well. So the questions that we're asking: where would you like to see improvements in Temecula? Should any part of these areas of interest change land uses or receive physical improvements? So we're focused on land use, but we're also asking about other physical improvements, and so that might be trail connections, that could be additional public realm amenities, gateways, kind of more urban design ideas. What areas can support the future of Temecula? So as you're thinking, this is a 25-year plan. So we're thinking kind of that long range. What are those areas that can support that future of Temecula? And what areas can help achieve community goals, city goals, and state goals? And that, the state goals is a little nod to RENA, as you brought up there earlier. In terms of instructions, I think we have these maps set up on the tables. We're going to review each area of interest. What is the focus of where land uses changes should occur, if any? We're going to ask you to draw some boundaries. We have some markers out here for you to actually physical draw boundaries on the maps. We're looking to spend kind of no more than 5 minutes on each zone, because we're going to, after we draw these boundaries, we're going to come back and actually talk about what are the land uses or physical improvement changes that should occur. So this isn't about going into great depth about what those changes are. It's really like, where should we focus first, and then kind of we'll come back and talk about what do we see occurring in those areas. So ideally no more than 5 minutes, and we'll share ideas. We may just do this idea sharing at the end to talk about the areas of interest and what you've identified in there.
I think we have one question, and then I'll explain how we'll break it out.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was the last meeting and the one before where we discussed the number of people, or the number of people who'd be going out of the city every day versus coming in because of jobs and stuff. So I just wanted to get a quick refresher on what that stat was again. Was it more people leaving Temecula or less when it comes to daily jobs and outside commute? I mean, just trying to understand for more of the traffic congestion part.
Yeah, so are you referring back to the circulation discussion?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different patterns based on different types of data. I think that when we're looking at these focus areas, that is something we can consider as a part of this land use discussion as well. We have commuters to San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles County, and we can get some more data, but that's something we can basically provide as information to you as a part of this interest study. So that way you're not making decisions in a vacuum, but I think this is kind of like, well, what would potentially go there, and then does it actually work, right? So that's the whole point of this tonight. Does that answer your question fully? Okay.
All right, to break us up into groups tonight, I know that for mobility, we kind of all just stood up next to our neighbors and sat down. I'm going to have us count off 1 through, 1, 2, 3, and we'll go around. There's going to be, if I've done my mental math correctly, 2 groups of 4 and 1 group of 3. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind, you're going to start with 1. David, you're going to be 2. 3, and then start again at 1. Yeah. All right, very good. So table 1 closest to the PowerPoint, table 2 in the middle, and 3 in the back.
And then if I could have the planning staff come up, I'll introduce you in just a second.
Okay, guys, we're going to hear a little bit of sharing from each of the tables on some of the ideas that they discussed. So if there's 1 or 2, 3 ideas that you want to highlight from your discussions, that would be great. And we are going to start with table 1. So is anybody from table 1 ready to share?
If the rest of the GPAC would like to listen, we're going to start sharing some of the other tables' information.
Okay, so you guys are gonna have to help me out. I'm trying to remember where everything. Okay.
Just a couple key kind of ideas that you had. You don't have to talk about each zone.
Okay. All right. So, what? Yeah, the U-Haul area, the North Pacific Plan area. Okay. So in a lot of these areas where we were seeing opportunities, we'll get to that in a second. Let's say if you look at Old Town and then you look to the north and you look to the south of Old Town. South of Old Town, there's a lot of opportunity. It's not very densely built. Commercial on one side by the freeway, but again, not very densely built. And you have a water feature coming right down the middle of it, or onto one side, Marietta Creek. Has the opportunity for, again, an urban village. There's plan for a hotel in that area already. So building around that and creating these little clusters where it's a multi-use, multi-density. Yeah, we talked about maybe having too much retail, but in reusing some of this space and thinking much more walkable, then you're removing traffic trips. You're removing a lot of traffic by actually clustering everything. Density and intensity is not a bad thing, actually, when it's zoned appropriately. So that whole area, as you're kind of going south, where the U-Haul is, we were thinking urban village area there. You want to move on to Temecula Parkway in that area by the hospital? There's a couple of empty lots. One of them is going to be used by the hospital, but the other area by the hospital could be used for extended stay or extended care or hospice care that is healthcare related. There's also, you guys were talking about a equestrian center. Now, that one site that you're talking about may not be big enough, be usable, because there's some drainage and some other considerations specific to that. But we identified a couple, actually 3 locations for an equestrian center that might be more appropriate. One that's actually near, there's a couple of spots west of Jedediah and west of, was it La Paz? That are empty lots, that are bigger, that might be more usable and more easily accessed in and out. Another idea was actually on the other side of town by Summers Bend, where Nicholas Road is. They're put in a new access and trailhead and pull-through parking, and there may be land that's big enough and usable enough that you could actually have a real equestrian center and not just a little one, so that you could have a PA and you can have an arena and you can actually have events there. So that was one idea to address the equestrian population. We were looking at the mall area.
Yeah,
just repurposing. At some point, the mall's really successful. They're doing actually a pretty good job of keeping that thing, but it's bucking a national trend. So in the future, if we're putting on our guesstimation hats, maybe looking at that as something that's a much more vibrant area. Think Staples Center, think Fashion Valley? Where you have hotel, maybe an arena, and apartments, and student apartments, because the MSJC thing is going to be a campus. It's not just going to be MSJC. It's going to be multi-university kind of uses there. So you're going to need some sort of housing in that area. And having the mall to the north of that, you could have a very walkable sort of relationship between that, Costco, and the lot. So these are just some of the ideas. What am I missing, guys? These are all Sherry's ideas, by the way. It's not mine, not any of ours. We're all blaming Sherry on this one.
We did talk about really wanting to see a more of a village overlay style for the Temecula Town Center. I know there were plans in process for it. I hope those could maybe come back as something viable.
Right. So you know where the Thai restaurant and the old movie theater is, and the little Professor bookstore, and that whole dead area back there? Again, multi-use, residential apartment or condo, and walkable. You've got a lot of retail, so people could just walk around that area and keep on that area, and it becomes a much more usable sort of area. Same thing with the other, if you know where Hobby Lobby is, in that old theater area, that corner, that's that parking lot, that's kind of a dead area. Again, an urban villagey sort of thing. Multi-use, I think, is a better use than villagey. Where else?
Innovation Center. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we're currently the only city, it doesn't matter, in this area that doesn't have any kind of an innovation center. An innovation center is, or zoning, specific zoning encourages medical support from looking at cures, wet labs, dry labs, getting outside of the box for saving lives and changing the future, literally. We're literally I think we need to start looking at maybe setting aside some area for an innovation zone. And we were looking at the industrial freeway adjacent area between Jefferson and the freeway and the Marietta Creek. It looks like a good option.
Thanks, Table 1. Thank you. We are Table 2. One thing that's very heartening, I'll start off by saying we agree with just about everything you said, and we discussed a lot of that as well. And so I think it's demonstrating that there's some easy pickings here, that everybody's seeing the same things. So I think that's wonderful. So I won't go into some of the things that you said, but we had a couple talking about Old Town. We certainly agree on the south side, and one thing we talked about is reopening what we had years ago, which was the South Side Specific Plan, which is long since defunct, but looking at that whole area anew with some kind of more creative use than what currently is there. Also in Old Town, in the existing portion, creating, call it an entertainment overlay, where the regulations can be a little bit softer than they are now for entertainment businesses to come in. There would still have to be some regulation, obviously, and with noise and everything else, but it could be softened to the point where we could encourage more of it in Old Town. One of the things we really looked at hard on the very north end of town, the Diaz property that the city has owned for a million years, and it was it was the tractor races, it was the rodeo, it was the Balloon and Wine Festival, it was the plan for a university at one time. We need to get that back and reclaim that. We called it a fairgrounds, but it can have all of those uses. I know, tractor races, I know. Why not? We've lost all that, and that was part of our identity for so long. Maybe the uses are a little bit different and a little bit more in keeping with the way Temecula is now than what it was 50 years ago. But still, there's room for all of that there. So we'd like to see that revert back to, it's city-owned. There's no reason not to do that. We also looked very hard at the mall and whether there's an opportunity to reopen the mall-specific plan and look at adaptive reuses there. One of the concerns that we had about it, not just for what it is today, but looking out to 2050, is the mall going to be a mall? And I think there are real questions about that, whether it will be. I mean, the directions that retail is going today is going in a completely opposite direction. And I know they're looking at their own reuses with entertainment and restaurants and things like that, but how much of that can you do? So we think there's a real opportunity there. And I think that's about it. Did I miss anything? And we talked about a lot, but, and just one comment I brought up to you. I don't mean to point, I'm sorry. I was saying that before coming here, I was having a conversation with my 14-year-old granddaughter, who is super smart and rather outspoken, and I asked her for her opinions on some of this. And she got really mad at me. And she doesn't understand why a bunch of old folks like us, excuse me for you young people, are talking about what they're going to live in 2050. And think about that. She's absolutely right. And so I was wondering if we can't put together, whether it's a group or a representative from that young community. There's some tremendous talent out there in this town. And bring them in and get their opinions. What is the town that they want to live in 2030, 2040, 2050? And I think that would be very valuable. So that's what we got.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Table 2. Table 3. Is there a volunteer?
Okay. Yeah, not to be repetitive, but yeah, starting with zones 1 and 2, we looked at the mall, and I like what you guys said about. We like what you guys said about that. Another area that we mentioned along with the mall specifically was Palm Plaza, because Palm Plaza reminds me of like what a shopping center in Old Orange County, where I grew up, looks like. It's 30 years old or so, and what will it look like when it's 60 years old, right? In that kind of a format. And it's not, don't take away from anything there, any businesses there, but it's not a real user-friendly setup where things are easily accessible and it's easy to move around in that center. So there's some potential there for reestablishing or changing into residential or mixed use. And then in zone 3, we looked at some potential tech and offices and hopefully attracting high wage and high skilled jobs to some pockets. A pocket over here by Diaz and Marietta Creek, which I guess is on the north end. Is that correct? Okay, on the north end. And then also, without gutting another hillside completely, we're kind of wondering about, as you move up toward Rancho California Road, is there a potential there to possibly bring in a few other tech companies? And then as you move into the uptown area, we certainly see mixed use and hopefully affordable, probably higher density housing with also some accessible businesses and smaller, perhaps smaller retail centers which people can get to easily and navigate easily. The big question is going to be how are we going to get people in and out of Old Town and how are we going to get them to Uptown? And this is something I stated a couple meetings back that I think we should be looking at the potential for alternate multimodal transportation, which by the way was in the the vision feedback, and if you look at the data from the last meeting, there's definitely an interest in that. And so potentially the community garden / equestrian center or whatever comes to that area could actually be a terminus for that potentially. City Council's already spoken to some potential parking in that area, and people could be moved in and out of Old Town and down to Uptown and back the other way for people that live in Uptown and want to get to Old Town. So it's another alternate way to access Old Town. Not the only way, but an alternate way. And that takes us where? We did 1 and 2. In Zone 5, I guess the other one we'll talk about, we know this area we kind of targeted potentially. There aren't really a lot of hotels there. There aren't any hotels that I'm aware of in Zone 5 along Temecula Parkway, so perhaps on one end or the other, you can access some recreational areas if you keep going on 79, right, away from the freeway. You can access some trails and recreational areas fairly easily and get up to Idlewild from that area. So, I mean, there is potential for some lodging there if we don't want to crowd our hotels altogether. And with that, I will pass the mic.
Definitely, we're in support of, the equestrian community and what they need support for, and beautiful wine country and a lot of the preserves out there in green spaces. I would love to preserve, but two, I think if we focus on a lot of the education, leveling up education, so the MSJCs, anywhere we can put any more of those spaces that can learn, teach us. We can invite people, other companies. When I lost my job with Dell Technology because I didn't want to commute out to Irvine, I asked Temecula Talk, where do they commute to go to their jobs? And they told me they go to Irvine and San Diego. And the one place I couldn't really find any kind of tech company here, but I did finally find one that someone told me about. It's called Scorpios, and we actually have a silicone foundry here in Temecula. And they were looking to hire people, but nobody has those skills to do, that have been working in a foundry. And I said, wow, can you imagine if we could teach people those skills to be able to work in the next AMD Intel of Temecula, and then keep that. We don't have to commute out. We can stay in, and from there we could use, all our transportation and to get us around town. We have the wine trolleys. We could get those, something like that to get us around town and invite companies here and stay here. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and then finally, I think it was Adam's group that mentioned Summers Bend area. We were looking at, and I know there's housing going in there, but the discussion of how far are people from a grocery store and how do they get to a grocery store? And so we're not necessarily suggesting that we build a bunch of large shopping centers, but the idea that you have a market that you can get to perhaps within a mile or so from your house. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to live in Chardonnay Hills, which down the hill from us, there's a shopping center with a drugstore, but most of Temecula really doesn't have that. I mean, if you look at the people that are up in Red Hawk, they've got to work their way down to 79 and everything's there. So without congesting things, we'd like to make that accessible to people where they can get to those smaller centers easily.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. This was some amazing feedback, really informative, and we're looking forward to kind of digesting and diving into all the comments that you put on here and debriefing as a team. Amanda, do you want to end with
I just
anything?
wanted to let everyone know that we will not have a meeting next month. So taking the information we've heard tonight, coupled with the other outreach we've collected, we're going to be doing a lot of homework, research, and work to develop some additional ideas for you. So there will be no meeting in March. We expect to be back with you at the regular meeting in April. So Laurel will be in communication with you as a reminder, but you can go ahead and definitely take off the March meeting from your calendar. But please do keep the April and May meetings on your schedule.
And with that, I'd like to thank the members of the community again. If you haven't turned in your feedback paperwork, please turn it into Laurel before you leave this evening. I want to thank the GPAC again, and again, our city staff for coming out tonight on a long weekend. Coming out on a long weekend is really important and to get this done, so we really appreciate your time this evening. And with that, we'll close the meeting.